I never imagined that my life would take such a strange, unexpected turn. I was just an ordinary guy, living an ordinary life, until that day, the day I became her assistant. At the time, I didn't realize it would change everything about me, how I saw myself, how I dressed, even how I walked and spoke. Looking back, it feels like a dream, or maybe a long, slow transformation that I couldn't stop, even if I wanted to. It all began when I lost my job at the marketing firm. I'd been out of work for almost 2 months, sending resumes, going to interviews, and getting nothing but polite rejections. The stress was unbearable. Bills were piling up, and I was desperate. So when my sister, Melissa, mentioned that her boss was looking for a personal assistant, I didn't hesitate. I didn't even care what kind of job it was, I just needed something. Melissa worked for a high-end fashion designer named Veronica Hayes. She was known for her sharp eye for detail, her temper, and her near-obsessive demand for perfection. I'd heard about her from Melissa plenty of times. She was beautiful, intimidating, and completely in control, the kind of woman who could silence a room just by walking in. I didn't think someone like that would ever consider hiring me, but Melissa said Veronica needed someone adaptable. Adaptable? That word stayed with me. I didn't know what it meant in her world, but I was about to find out. The morning of the interview, I wore my best suit, a little worn but neatly pressed. When I arrived at Veronica's studio, I felt completely out of place. The space was bright, filled with soft music, racks of dresses, and the smell of expensive perfume. Models walked past me with perfect posture, their heels clicking on the floor. Everything seemed flawless, except me. When Veronica finally appeared, she didn't greet me with a handshake. She simply looked me up and down, like an artist inspecting a blank canvas. "You're Melissa's brother," she said, her tone calm but cutting. "You don't look very fashion-oriented." I swallowed hard.
No, ma'am.
"But I'm hardworking. I learn fast." Her lips curved slightly. "We'll see about that." She led me into her office, sleek, white, spotless. Every detail was arranged perfectly. She asked questions about organization, time management, multitasking. I did my best to sound confident, though her stare made me uneasy. When I mentioned that I could adapt to any environment, she smiled, almost like she'd been waiting for me to say that. "Good," she said finally, "because in my studio, adaptability is everything." I thought she meant long hours, creative chaos, maybe demanding clients. I didn't know that adaptability would soon mean something else entirely. That first week was exhausting. Veronica expected me to anticipate her needs before she said a word. I handled calls, fetched coffee, delivered samples, and kept track of schedules that changed by the hour. But despite my efforts, she was never fully satisfied. One afternoon, a last-minute client meeting sent everyone into panic mode. A model canceled unexpectedly, and Veronica was furious. "We need someone to fit the prototype," she snapped, pacing the room. "Someone with roughly these measurements, lean frame, narrow shoulders, smooth skin." Then, to my horror, her eyes landed on me. "Take off your jacket," she said. I froze. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Her voice left no room for argument. "You're close enough in size. It's just for internal photos. We don't have time to find a replacement." Before I could protest, her assistants were already gathering around me, measuring, tugging, and adjusting. I stood there, stunned, as a sleek dress was slipped over my head, a deep blue thing that shimmered under the lights. It was strange, soft, unfamiliar. I expected to feel ridiculous, but instead, something unexpected happened. I felt calm. When Veronica stepped back to inspect me, her expression changed from irritation to curiosity. "Huh," she murmured. "Not bad. The fit is almost perfect." The room quieted. Even the assistants seemed surprised. I wanted to disappear, but Veronica was already circling me like a sculptor studying her creation. "Stand up straight," she commanded. "Relax your shoulders. Chin up." She adjusted a strand of hair that had fallen over my forehead, then stepped back again. "You'll do," she said finally. "For now." That "for now" became a pattern. Over the next few days, I found myself doing more than just office work. Veronica had me model sample pieces when her staff was shorthanded, always under the excuse of testing proportions. At first, I protested, but she would give me that sharp look, the one that made my words melt away. Soon, the assistants began to joke lightly about it. "You wear it better than half the models," one said. "You've got the frame for it." I tried to laugh it off, but inside, I felt a strange mix of embarrassment and curiosity. Veronica, however, wasn't joking. One morning, she called me into her office and closed the door behind me. "I have an idea," she said. "I need an assistant who understands the designs, truly understands them. I can't have someone who just schedules meetings and answers phones. I need someone who knows the feel, the movement, the balance of every piece." I frowned, not quite following. "You mean learning about materials?" "I mean learning what it feels like to wear them," she said firmly. "To understand femininity, not just from the outside, but from within." I didn't know what to say. It sounded absurd. But her tone wasn't mocking, it was serious, almost philosophical. "If you're willing," she added, "I'll train you myself. But it won't be easy. You'll have to commit fully." I should have said no. I should have walked out. But something in her voice, in her certainty, drew me in. Maybe I wanted to prove myself. Maybe I wanted to impress her. Maybe, deep down, I wanted to know what she meant, to truly understand. So I said yes. From that day forward, my transformation began, quietly, subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. Veronica didn't start with clothes. She started with posture, tone, and movement. She made me balance books on my head, walk across the room without sound, practice greeting clients with a softer, smoother voice. "You need grace," she'd say. "Control through elegance." At first, it was just strange training, but soon, it became routine. My steps grew lighter, my gestures more refined. The staff started calling me the chameleon, half teasing, half impressed. One afternoon, Veronica looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen before, almost proud. "You're beginning to understand," she said quietly. "But you're still holding back." "Holding back?" I asked. She nodded. "You're afraid of what you might see if you stop pretending this is just a job." Her words unsettled me. I laughed awkwardly, insisting I wasn't afraid. But that night, as I looked at my reflection, standing straighter, speaking softer, wearing the faint trace of foundation Veronica had applied for a presentation test, I realized she was right. Something inside me was shifting, and I didn't know whether to stop it or let it continue. That was the moment I began to wonder if this transformation, this strange journey, was about more than fashion. It was about identity. And I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't quite define. The next morning, I arrived at the studio earlier than usual. The streets were still quiet, and the golden light from the sunrise spilled through the tall glass windows of the building. I stood for a moment outside the door, staring at my reflection in the glass, a man in a crisp white shirt, hair neatly brushed, but something about the posture already looked different. My stance had softened, my movements slower and more deliberate. It was as if Veronica's lessons were settling into my bones without me even realizing it. When I stepped inside, Veronica was already there, leaning over a sketchbook, her pencil gliding effortlessly across the page. "You're early," she said without looking up. "I thought I'd get a head start," I replied, trying to sound confident. She smiled faintly. "Good. We have a busy day." That busy day turned out to be another turning point. Veronica had arranged a small private showcase for a few elite clients, a test run before the upcoming fashion week. Everything had to be flawless, and the atmosphere in the studio was electric. The models rehearsed their walks, stylists buzzed around with makeup brushes and hairpins, and Veronica moved through it all like a conductor commanding an orchestra. Then came the problem. Again, one of the models called in sick at the last minute, and chaos erupted. The replacement was nowhere to be found, and the schedule couldn't be delayed. I stood near the door, frozen, as Veronica's sharp eyes darted across the room and landed on me. "Not again," I muttered under my breath. "Exactly again," she said. "Get changed." Within minutes, I was ushered into the fitting room. This time, the assistants worked with practiced precision. A cream-colored blouse, a soft pastel skirt that flowed just above the knees, a wig styled into neat waves, and a touch of foundation and lip tint, subtle but transforming. As they worked, I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my chest. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the person staring back. It wasn't perfect, of course, but it wasn't laughable either. There was something strangely convincing about it. The posture, the calmness, the delicate tilt of my head, all things Veronica had drilled into me over the past weeks, somehow made it believable. When I stepped out, Veronica studied me for a long moment, then gave a single approving nod. "You'll represent the assistant line," she said. "You're going to show them the soft launch of the office collection." I blinked. "You want me to?" "Yes," she interrupted. "And don't question it. Just remember, confidence is the real disguise." The music started. My hands trembled as I stood behind the curtain. The sound of heels clicking on the runway floor echoed in the air. One model exited, and the assistant signaled for me to step forward. I took a breath. Then another. And I walked. It wasn't perfect. I was sure my movements were stiff, my steps hesitant, but as the lights hit me, something inside me shifted. The soft fabric brushed against my skin, the faint scent of perfume surrounded me, and the murmurs from the audience faded into silence. In that moment, I wasn't pretending anymore. I was just moving, gracefully, naturally. When I returned backstage, Veronica was waiting. Her expression wasn't surprise this time. It was quiet satisfaction. "You did well," she said simply. "You didn't fight it." Her words lingered in my mind for days. After that event, things changed. Slowly, subtly, but undeniably. Veronica began including me in design discussions. She would ask my opinion on cuts, textures, and colors, things I'd never paid attention to before. And strangely, I found myself understanding them, even caring about them. She also began experimenting more with my appearance. At first, she claimed it was just for practical reasons, testing fits, comparing proportions. But soon it became routine. She'd hand me a new blouse, a pair of slim-fit trousers, or even a set of heels, just to see how it balances the line. And every time, I'd comply, feeling a mixture of embarrassment and curiosity. One afternoon, she called me into her private fitting room, a place I rarely entered. The air was quiet, scented faintly with lavender. On the table lay a set of clothes unlike anything she'd ever given me before, a tailored pencil skirt, a silk blouse, and a delicate necklace. "Try it," she said softly. I hesitated. "This isn't for a fitting, is it?" She met my gaze. "No. It's for you." My throat tightened. "For me?" She stepped closer, her tone calm but unwavering. "You've been living halfway between two selves. It's time you see who you've become." For a long moment I said nothing. Then, quietly, I began to change. The blouse felt impossibly light, the skirt snug but strangely natural. When I fastened the necklace and looked into the mirror, my breath caught. It wasn't just the clothes. It was the way I stood, the way I carried myself. My reflection didn't look like a costume anymore. It looked like someone else. Someone real. Veronica came up behind me and rested a hand lightly on my shoulder. "Now," she said, her voice low, "walk." I did. Across the room, back again. My movements were smooth, almost instinctive. I could feel her eyes on me, not as a critic, but as a mentor watching something take shape. When I stopped, she said quietly, "Do you understand now?" I swallowed hard. "I think I do." But the truth was, I didn't fully understand it yet. Not then. Days turned into weeks, and my role continued to shift. The staff began to treat me differently, not mockingly, but with a strange respect. They'd ask for my input, include me in creative meetings, and refer to me as Veronica's assistant, with a kind of admiration that hadn't been there before. I found myself growing more confident, more composed. My handwriting even changed, smaller, neater. My speech softened. At home, I caught myself standing in front of the mirror, experimenting with hairstyles or folding scarves the way Veronica had shown me. It wasn't just about work anymore. It was about something internal, something I couldn't explain. One evening, after everyone had left, I found Veronica sitting by the window, staring at the city lights. "You've come a long way," she said when she noticed me. "I'm still not sure who I am anymore," I admitted. She smiled faintly. "That's good. It means you're growing." Her words should have comforted me, but instead, they left me uneasy. Growing into what? That night, as I walked home through the quiet streets, I passed a shop window and caught sight of my reflection. My shirt was a little too fitted, my steps a little too graceful, my expression softer than I remembered. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself. And yet, I didn't look away. I kept walking, wondering how far this transformation would go, and whether I still had control over it at all. The morning after that realization, I woke up earlier than usual and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror. It felt strange to admit it, but I didn't entirely dislike what I saw. My face seemed more composed somehow, my movements lighter. I'd stopped slouching without noticing, and even the way I brushed my hair had changed. A small part of me wondered whether I was becoming what Veronica wanted me to be, or whether I was discovering something I had always ignored about myself. When I arrived at the studio, Veronica was already there, dressed in her usual sleek black attire, her hair pinned into a perfect twist. She looked at me for a moment before saying, "You're adapting faster than I expected." I tried to laugh it off. "You make it hard not to." She tilted her head, studying me. "It's not about me. It's about you. You've stopped resisting. That's when transformation truly begins." Her words stayed with me throughout the day. Every instruction she gave, from the way I organized fabrics to the way I handled clients, carried that deeper undertone of change. It wasn't just about skill anymore. It was about presence, identity, and confidence. That afternoon, Veronica introduced a new client, an elegant older woman named Mrs. Caldwell, known for her demanding standards and influential connections. Veronica pulled me aside before the meeting. "You'll be assisting directly," she said. "She prefers subtlety and sophistication. I trust you can handle that." When Mrs. Caldwell arrived, I greeted her as I'd been taught. Calm, polite, graceful. She barely looked at me at first, but as the meeting went on, she began to address me more often, asking for my opinion on fabrics and color palettes. Each time, I answered carefully, remembering Veronica's advice, to speak with confidence, not hesitation. When the meeting ended, Mrs. Caldwell smiled faintly. "You're quite the refined young woman," she said casually before turning to leave. The room went silent. Veronica didn't correct her. Neither did I. For a moment, my heart skipped a beat. I didn't know if she truly believed I was a woman, or if it was just a polite slip of the tongue. But Veronica's expression said everything. She was testing me, waiting to see how I would react. I said nothing. When the door closed, she finally spoke. "You handled that beautifully." I felt my face grow warm. She thought. "Yes," Veronica interrupted. "And you didn't flinch. That's progress." I didn't know whether to feel proud or unsettled. From that day forward, Veronica began treating me differently. My tasks shifted from logistical errands to creative responsibilities, organizing outfits, assisting at fittings, even styling minor accessories. She trusted my taste, and I couldn't deny that it felt right. The attention to detail, the precision, the aesthetic balance, it all appealed to me in a way I'd never expected. Still, part of me struggled with what I was becoming. Each evening, when I went home and took off the carefully pressed clothes, the illusion faded. But the feeling lingered. I couldn't go back to the careless, unpolished person I'd been before. Then came the night that changed everything. Veronica was preparing for a major charity event, one that would bring together designers, sponsors, and celebrities. It was her chance to make an impression before Fashion Week. Naturally, the entire staff was under immense pressure. I worked late into the night, organizing logistics and coordinating deliveries, while Veronica perfected the final pieces. Around midnight, when the others had gone home, she called me into her office. On a mannequin beside her desk hung a stunning dress, sleek ivory silk, delicately embroidered with faint silver threads. "This is the centerpiece for tomorrow," she said. But the model we planned for had to cancel. I hesitated. "You're not thinking?" She looked at me calmly. "Who else understands my designs as well as you do? Who's walked in them before? Who can represent the essence I want? Grace, composure, confidence." I swallowed hard. "You can't be serious." "I am," she replied simply. "You're ready." I stared at the dress, my heart pounding. It was beautiful, but it wasn't just fabric. It was everything this journey represented. Every lesson, every change, every uncertain step that had brought me here. Finally, I said softly, "If you really think I can do it." "I know you can," she said. The next day was a blur. The studio buzzed with excitement as preparations began. Veronica's assistants helped me get ready in a private room. This time, it wasn't just a quick fitting. It was deliberate. They styled my hair into soft waves, applied natural makeup, and helped me into the ivory gown. When I looked in the mirror, I felt the same rush as before, that surreal moment when reality seemed to blur. The reflection staring back at me looked poised, elegant, and entirely different from the person who had first walked into this building weeks ago. Veronica appeared behind me, her gaze steady. "You look perfect," she said. "Now remember, tonight, you're not pretending. You're embodying." At the event, the lights were dazzling. The crowd shimmered with conversation and laughter, glasses clinking, music humming in the background. Veronica's collection was a success. Every piece met with admiration. And when it was my turn to walk out wearing the ivory dress, a quiet ripple of surprise moved through the audience. But there were no laughs, no whispers of mockery. Only silence and then applause. I walked with composure, my heart racing but my expression serene. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about whether I looked right. I just felt right. Every step carried a strange sense of freedom, as though I was shedding the last of my self-doubt with each movement. After the show, people congratulated Veronica, complimenting her collection and even asking who her new model was. She smiled faintly each time and said, "My assistant." Their eyes widened with surprise, then softened with admiration. Later that night, after everyone had left, I found myself alone in the dressing room, still in the gown, still catching my breath. I looked into the mirror and whispered, "Who are you now?" There was no clear answer, just a quiet sense of peace. When Veronica entered the room, she looked at me for a long moment before saying, "You've crossed the line between observation and experience. You understand now, don't you?" I nodded slowly. "I think I do." "This isn't about clothes," she said. "It's about discovering who you can be when you stop hiding behind what you think you're supposed to be." For the first time, I didn't feel confused or embarrassed. I felt whole. As I changed back into my regular clothes, I realized something profound. The transformation wasn't something Veronica had done to me. It was something she had revealed within me. And once it began, there was no turning back. The night after the charity event, I barely slept. My mind replayed every moment of the evening. The lights, the applause, the whispers of admiration, the feeling of the dress flowing around me as I walked. It didn't feel like humiliation or pretense anymore. It felt like revelation. For the first time in my life, I had stood before people and felt seen, not as an imposter, not as someone pretending, but as someone complete. And that realization scared me more than anything. When I came to work the next morning, Veronica was waiting in her office, sipping her coffee with that calm, analytical look she always wore. "You did well," she said without looking up. "The event was a success. The press is already talking." I nodded quietly. "Thank you. I just did what you asked." Her eyes lifted to meet mine. "No," she said. "You did more. You showed them something real. And that's why they noticed." I wasn't sure what to say. Compliments from Veronica were rare, and praise from her always carried a deeper meaning. I shifted uncomfortably, but she smiled faintly. "You still think this is temporary, don't you?" I hesitated. "I don't know what to think anymore." She stood, circling the desk slowly, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. What you're feeling is identity waking up. You've spent your life fitting into roles others expected of you, a worker, a man, a background figure. But here, you've been allowed to explore everything without judgment. I swallowed. You make it sound like I'm changing completely. Maybe you are, she said simply. But maybe you were always meant to. That conversation lingered with me for weeks. Every day, I felt myself drifting further from the person I had been. My old clothes, my old habits, they all felt foreign now. Even my voice, softer from weeks of practice, felt like it belonged to someone else. Veronica noticed everything. You're more at ease in this world now, she said one afternoon as I arranged fabric samples. You carry yourself differently. I'm just getting used to the job, I said, though even I didn't believe that anymore. She smiled knowingly. Adaptation is the first stage. Acceptance is the next. Around that time, she began assigning me new responsibilities, client consultations, styling trials, and even personal errands that required me to present myself as her assistant in the most literal sense. That meant dressing the part, not just behind closed doors. The first time she asked me to accompany her to a client luncheon, I thought she was joking. Like this? I asked, gesturing at the modest outfit she had laid out for me. A soft blouse, a tailored blazer, slim trousers, and low heels. Yes, exactly like that, she said calmly. It's professional, and it suits you. I hesitated. Veronica, people will notice. She looked at me evenly. They'll notice confidence before they notice clothing. Trust me. She was right. At the luncheon, no one questioned me. No one stared. The conversation flowed effortlessly, and when people addressed me, they did so with complete acceptance. It was surreal. I felt nervous at first, but as the meeting continued, I found myself relaxing. The tone of my voice, the rhythm of my gestures, all of it felt natural now. Afterward, as we walked back to the car, Veronica glanced at me and said, "You did perfectly. You didn't flinch once." I was terrified, I admitted. "You hit it well," she replied with a smile. "That's the art of transformation, appearing composed while the world tries to define you." Her words became a mantra in the weeks that followed. But not everyone understood. Melissa, my sister, began to notice the changes when I visited her one weekend. She eyed me carefully as we talked, her brow furrowed. "You seem different," she said slowly. "Is everything okay at work?" "Yeah, fine," I said quickly. "It's just demanding." She didn't look convinced. "You're dressing differently, too. More of polish." I shrugged. "It's part of the job." She laughed lightly, but there was concern behind her smile. "Well, whatever Veronica's doing, it's working. You seem more confident. Just don't lose yourself, okay?" Her words stung a little. Lose myself? What if I was finally finding myself? Back at the studio, Veronica could sense my unease. "You're struggling again," she said one evening as we closed up. "My sister thinks I'm changing too much," I confessed. Veronica leaned against a counter, her expression thoughtful. Change frightens people who haven't experienced it themselves. She sees the old you fading, and she doesn't know what's taking its place. I sighed. Maybe I don't either. She smiled faintly. "You will." A few days later, Veronica received an invitation to a televised design showcase, a major event where up-and-coming designers displayed their work live. "This could redefine everything," she said, her tone unusually serious. "And I want you to represent my line again." I froze. "You mean on stage?" "Yes," she replied. "This time not as a stand-in. As yourself." I stared at her, confused. "As myself? You mean, as the person you've become," she said gently. "Not hiding behind excuses. Not pretending it's an emergency. Just you, the assistant who grew into more than a title." I didn't know how to answer. Part of me wanted to refuse, to cling to the safety of denial. But another part of me, the part that remembered the rush of the runway, the peace of seeing my reflection that night, whispered yes. So I agreed. The preparations were even more intense this time. Veronica worked tirelessly, refining every stitch and line of the garments. I practiced for hours, walking, posing, presenting with confidence. The staff treated me like a professional now, not a curiosity. It was strange how normal it all felt. On the day of the showcase, the air buzzed with excitement. Cameras, lights, designers, and models filled the backstage area. Veronica checked every detail, her sharp eyes scanning everything. When she finally turned to me, she smiled softly. "You're ready." The outfit she had chosen for me was stunning, a soft rose-toned ensemble that combined elegance with subtle strength. It wasn't overtly feminine, but it carried an undeniable grace. When I put it on, I didn't feel disguised. I felt aligned. As I stepped onto the stage under the bright lights, I felt a calm wash over me. The audience's gaze no longer frightened me. I walked confidently, each step deliberate, each movement measured. The murmurs of admiration that followed felt distant. What mattered was the sense of balance within me. After the show, Veronica found me backstage, her expression radiant. "You did it," she said quietly. "You didn't just wear the design. You embodied it." I exhaled shakily. I thought I'd be nervous, but I wasn't. It felt natural. She nodded. "Because you're no longer acting. You've accepted it." I looked down at myself, at the outfit, the carefully styled hair, the subtle makeup, all of it symbols of the journey I'd taken. "Do you think I've changed too much?" I asked softly. Veronica smiled.
No.
"You've just stopped pretending to be less than who you are." That night, as I stood in front of the mirror back home, I realized I no longer felt torn between two versions of myself. The lines had blurred completely, and what remained was one: composed, balanced, authentic. The day I became her assistant had changed everything. But it wasn't just about serving Veronica's vision anymore. It was about discovering mine. And deep down, I knew the transformation wasn't ending. It was just beginning. The next morning came with a quiet heaviness. I woke up earlier than usual, perhaps out of nervous anticipation. The mirror in my room caught my reflection as I passed by, and I paused. The sight that looked back at me wasn't just me in disguise anymore. It was someone caught between two versions of themselves. My hair had grown long enough to brush over my ears, soft and manageable thanks to the countless times Melissa had styled it. My skin looked clearer, my lashes seemed longer, and even the way I stood felt different, poised, careful, and balanced. I wasn't trying to play a role anymore. I was beginning to live it. That morning, Melissa greeted me in the kitchen with an unusually bright smile. "Big day today," she said cheerfully, handing me a cup of coffee. "We're going to a client's office for a presentation. You'll be assisting me directly, and I want you to look sharp, polished, and confident. You're not just an assistant. You're a reflection of me." I nodded, the words sinking in deeper than she realized. A reflection of her. That was exactly what I had been becoming without even noticing. She'd laid out an outfit for me on the couch, a fitted cream blouse, a soft pink pencil skirt, and a light blazer. The clothes looked elegant, feminine, and professional all at once. For a moment, I hesitated. I had worn dresses before, skirts too, but something about this felt different. This wasn't for a disguise or a joke or even an experiment. This was me representing her, and somehow representing this new version of myself. Melissa must have seen the uncertainty in my eyes because she placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Hey," she said softly. "You've done amazing so far. Don't let doubt undo your progress. You carry yourself beautifully, believe it." Her encouragement gave me the strength I needed. I got dressed carefully, making sure every detail matched her standards. She helped me apply makeup again, just a bit of foundation, mascara, and a soft shade of lipstick that complemented the outfit. She styled my hair into a neat low bun, leaving a few strands loose around my face. When I finally looked at myself, I didn't see hesitation anymore. I saw calm confidence. Maybe not complete comfort yet, but something close. The drive to the client's office was filled with quiet energy. Melissa briefed me on what to expect, who we were meeting, the nature of the project, and how I should assist during the presentation. She trusted me enough to handle small details on my own, setting up the projector, arranging notes, even greeting the guests. I felt valued. At the office, everything unfolded so quickly that I didn't have time to overthink. People referred to me as Miss, and oddly, I didn't feel the need to correct them. The respect in their tone, the professionalism, it all blended seamlessly into the moment. I handled my tasks smoothly, taking notes, arranging documents, and even answering a few polite questions. Melissa's proud glances from across the room kept me grounded. After the meeting ended successfully, Melissa and I grabbed lunch at a nearby cafe. She was practically glowing with pride. "You were incredible today," she said. "Composed, reliable, and graceful. The clients even complimented you." I laughed, half in disbelief. They thought I was someone else entirely. Melissa tilted her head. "Maybe. Or maybe they saw what I've been seeing for a while now." Her words lingered in my mind all afternoon. When we returned to our office, she handed me a folder filled with upcoming tasks and schedules. "You've officially earned your place," she said. "From now on, you're not just helping me, you're part of the team." Something inside me swelled with pride. For so long, I'd felt lost in my life, unsure of where I belonged. But here, with her guidance, I'd found purpose. The transformation had begun as something temporary, something external, but it had changed something deep within me. The following days were a blur of work and subtle self-discovery. I became more comfortable in my presentation, my gestures, my voice. The people at the office accepted me without question, treating me as part of the environment. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel out of place. But it wasn't without its moments of inner conflict. Late at night, I'd sometimes catch myself wondering who I really was beneath all of it. The person I used to be felt distant, fading, yet I couldn't completely let go of him either. I wasn't sure if I was running away from something or toward something. One evening, after a particularly long day, Melissa and I sat on her balcony, overlooking the city lights. The air was calm, the sky fading into shades of indigo. She handed me a glass of juice and said quietly, "You know, when I first asked you to help me, I didn't imagine it would go this far. But I've seen you grow into something beautiful. Not just in how you look, but how you carry yourself, how you approach life." I looked at her, trying to find the right words. "It's strange," I admitted. "At first, I thought I was just playing a part, pretending to be someone else. But now, I don't know. It feels like I've found something real." She nodded, her expression soft. "That's because transformation doesn't always mean losing who you were. Sometimes it just means uncovering a version of yourself you didn't know existed." Her words struck deep. I thought about all the times I'd doubted myself, all the fears I'd carried. Maybe I had been holding myself back from possibilities I didn't dare to explore. From that day on, I approached my role with renewed energy. The more I worked, the more I embraced this side of me, not as a disguise, but as an expression of something genuine. The transformation wasn't forced anymore. It flowed naturally. Still, the world outside our little bubble didn't know. My friends, my family, they had no idea about what was happening in my life. And the thought of telling them filled me with a mix of fear and curiosity. Would they understand? Would they accept this new version of me? One Friday evening, Melissa looked at me after work and said, "We're going shopping tomorrow. You need your own wardrobe now, something that's truly yours." The idea sent a rush of nervous excitement through me. I nodded, smiling faintly. It wasn't just about clothes anymore, it was about identity. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my mind full of questions. How had one simple job changed my entire perception of self? How had I gone from being her helper to becoming someone entirely new? And yet, even with all the confusion, there was peace. Because deep down, I knew something was awakening, a version of me that had always been waiting quietly beneath the surface. Tomorrow's shopping trip felt like the next chapter in a story I hadn't expected to live. But I was ready for it now. The morning sun would bring more than just another day. It would bring the next step of my transformation. The next morning dawned warm and golden, the sunlight slipping through the curtains like a quiet invitation. I got up early, maybe too early, because my nerves wouldn't let me sleep any longer. Today was the day Melissa and I were going shopping for my own wardrobe. It felt unreal, like crossing a line I'd been tiptoeing around for weeks. This wasn't just borrowing her clothes or dressing up for a job. This was claiming something as mine. Melissa greeted me with her usual calm confidence. She was already dressed casually, jeans, a white blouse, and her hair tied neatly in a ponytail. "You ready?" she asked, smiling knowingly. I nodded, though my stomach fluttered with nerves. "As ready as I'll ever be." Her smile widened. "Good. Because today isn't just about clothes. It's about finding what makes you feel like you." The drive to the shopping district was peaceful. The streets shimmered with early light, and I found myself staring out the window, thinking about everything that had led me here. It started as a simple favor, a temporary disguise. But now, I couldn't even picture going back to who I was before. Not because I didn't want to, but because that version of me felt incomplete somehow. When we arrived, Melissa led me straight into a boutique that radiated elegance, soft lighting, pastel tones, gentle music playing in the background. The kind of place where every detail felt intentional. I hesitated at the entrance, but Melissa nudged me gently. "Go on," she whispered. "Trust me, you belong here." Inside, the sales assistant greeted us warmly and immediately turned her attention to me. "Looking for something special?" she asked kindly. I froze for a moment, unsure how to answer, but Melissa smoothly stepped in. "Yes, we're building a professional wardrobe for her. Something classic, polished, but still expressive." Her. The word echoed in my mind like a quiet heartbeat. We started browsing. Blouses, skirts, slacks, dresses. It was overwhelming at first. Every hanger seemed to hold a different possibility. Melissa encouraged me to try on anything that caught my eye, no matter how unsure I felt. "You'll never know until you see it on yourself," she said with a wink. The first outfit I tried was a simple navy blue dress. Clean lines, modest fit, but undeniably elegant. When I stepped out of the fitting room, Melissa gasped softly. "Now that," she said, "is you." I turned to face the mirror, and for a long moment, I didn't recognize the person staring back. She looked confident, mature, even graceful. There was still a trace of the old me there, hidden beneath the surface, but she was changing. I smiled, almost shyly. "It feels right," I admitted. And it did. Not just the dress, but the feeling that came with it. The way it aligned with how I'd started to feel inside. Over the next couple of hours, we picked out outfits for every occasion, work attire, casual wear, even a few things just for comfort. Melissa helped me choose shoes and accessories, always with her thoughtful eye for detail. She guided, but never pushed. Every choice was mine, and that mattered. When we finally left the boutique, my arms were full of shopping bags, and my heart felt lighter than it had in years. Melissa laughed as she saw the grin on my face. "I told you this would be fun," she said. "It's more than fun," I replied quietly. "It's freeing." That evening, back at the apartment, I unpacked everything carefully. Each piece felt like a small declaration of self, one that I hadn't realized I was capable of making. Melissa watched me with quiet pride. "You've come a long way," she said softly. "When you first walked through my door, you were nervous, unsure. Now look at you." I sat down beside her, still holding one of the blouses I'd bought. "Do you ever think about how strange this all is?" I asked. "That something that started as a job turned into this?" Melissa smiled thoughtfully. "Life has a funny way of leading us to what we need, even if it doesn't look like what we expected." She paused, then added, "You found strength in this. That's what matters." I looked at her, grateful in ways I couldn't fully express. "You changed my life," I said honestly. She shook her head. "No, you changed your own life. I just gave you the space to see who you really are." That night, I stood in front of the mirror one last time before bed. I wasn't in makeup or fancy clothes anymore, just a simple top and loose pants, but somehow, I still saw the same quiet confidence in my reflection. The person looking back wasn't pretending. They weren't confused. They were just me. It wasn't about labels or appearances anymore. It was about acceptance, about allowing myself to exist as I was, without apology. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. At work, I was respected for my professionalism and attention to detail. My colleagues treated me naturally, without judgment. Melissa and I became an unstoppable team, our dynamics seamless, our communication effortless. One afternoon, while organizing some paperwork, Melissa called me over. "We got the client feedback," she said with a proud smile. "They mentioned how polished our presentation was and how composed my assistant was under pressure." I laughed softly. "Guess I made a good impression." "You made the impression," she replied. "And that's what makes all the difference." Her words stayed with me long after. Because she was right, this experience had changed everything. It had shown me resilience I didn't know I had, and given me a perspective that redefined how I saw the world and myself. Months later, I found myself standing by the same window where it all began, looking out over the city lights. The reflection in the glass looked calm, assured, and at peace. I thought about that first day, how nervous, uncertain, and out of place I'd felt. I thought about every moment of self-doubt, every glance in the mirror that made me question who I was becoming. And now, standing there, I realized the answer had been growing inside me all along. It wasn't about losing my old identity, it was about embracing every part of who I was. Both sides, both experiences, both truths. Melissa joined me by the window, her expression soft. "You know," she said quietly, "you've become one of the strongest people I know." I smiled faintly. "I just followed your lead." She chuckled. "No, you learned to lead yourself." We stood there in comfortable silence for a while, the city below us alive with movement and light. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. That night, before turning off the lights, I whispered to myself the words that had carried me through every doubt, every change, every reflection. This is me. And that's enough. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our channel.